Welcome to the Emblazers show, where B2B leaders are igniting revenue. I'm Abby Kerr with the Emblaze Revenue Community by Corporate Visions. You're probably used to hearing from Tim Riesterer on this show, and you will. He's here, just kind of off camera for this particular episode. What we're going to do today and for the next few episodes is I will share conversations that Tim has recently had with some amazing guests, and I'll pop in every now and then for some commentary and color. Today's guest is Betsy Westhafer. Betsy is the founder and CEO of the Congruity Group, where she helps B2B executives strategically engage with their most valuable customers through executive customer advisory boards and executive roundtables. After 25 years in business, Betsy recognized her true passion, designing and executing customer advisory boards and executive roundtables that deliver measurable results for high-growth organizations. Her clients consistently achieve 100% customer retention and double-digit account value growth. She's also the author of Profitability: Planning Your Disruptive Future and is recognized as a thought leader in strategic customer engagement, having won the International Torch Award for Ethics. Today, Betsy helps companies gain critical market insights directly from the executives who shape their industries, enabling organizations to innovate, grow, and stay ahead of market disruption. Let's watch Tim and Betsy right now.
That intro, Betsy, that's a winner. I just love what it is that you do in a world where we have figured out ways not to actually spend time together, that like you are like, wait, this is still a big deal and a thing. Cause I'm old enough to remember when we called them CABs, customer advisory boards. And I'm like, those are still a thing. Well, according to you, they're more important than ever. So tell us a little bit about why CABs and then whatever their follow-on versions look like are still a thing.
Yeah, thanks. I agree with you. I think we have the pendulum swung so far to not engaging in person, just for all the obvious reasons. And so that's what I am passionate about, is that human connection and the difference between a Zoom meeting and an in-person meeting, and the difference between really asking for relationship development from your customers rather than just a purchase order, so to speak. And I just think it's something that now more than ever is needed. And also just the whole idea of blind spots. You know, I think we all get so busy that we don't take time to shine a light on our blind spots. And I think the best opportunity to do that is by talking to your customers, because oftentimes they have the answers to the questions that are spinning around in your head, and all you have to do is ask them.
And this isn't just like your customer. These are the executives at your customers, and folks listening to our podcast could be individual contributors, frontline managers, maybe directors, hopefully some C-suite leaders here. But what we're talking about is really trying to connect with the senior most decider at your customers. That's not who we deal with every day. But yet that's the goal, right? Is that accurate? Like, how do you describe when you're like, get in touch with your customer, hang with your customer? You are talking about trying to keep this at pretty elevated level, right?
Correct. And I had a client express this to me in a really unique way not too long ago. They have really great relationships at the operational level, but actually their board and their private equity firms mandated that in 2025, they are to elevate up to the C-suite with their relationships to really add an extra layer of protection against the competition. Because at the end of the day, the C-suite oftentimes are the decision makers, the budget holders. And if that relationship is developed, it's one more advantage over the competition in keeping them at bay. And so it was actually a mandate from their board and their PE firms to elevate up to the executive level. So what we did is we put together a strategy for how to do that in a 3-year roadmap. So it did include customer advisory boards, but it also included building a community, and it included executive roundtables and industry think tanks where they're thought leaders in the industry with the people that help shape the industry. So doing industry think tanks and those kinds of activities. So they have a 3-year roadmap on how they're going to elevate up to the C-suite with their relationships.
So some of it's packaging, like different experiences maybe are more attractive to senior level audiences than traditional customer advisory boards that feel like maybe you want a user community and da-da-da. So that knowing that we want to get higher is not the problem. Most companies, they're like, we got to get higher. Getting higher is the problem. So can we call you the C-suite whisperer? Like, how are you getting people? I don't care how you call it, a think tank, call it an advisory board, call it a pint in a pub, whatever you want to call it. How do you get them there? Like, what's the key to getting access to these people's precious time?
It's really a matter of creating and, more importantly, communicating the value on why they want to be there and why they don't want to miss out. There's a little bit of FOMO built in, not a manipulative way, but we create such a compelling value prop for them that they want to participate in this. And we've learned over the years what resonates with the C-suite on getting them to the table. So that's been really helpful for our clients. It's really about creating an environment, first of all, that is conducive to executive level dialogue. It's not about us as facilitators. It's us creating this environment where this two-way dialogue can happen. So we actually like to fade into the background. We want to drive that dialogue between our clients and their customers. It's not about one or the other. It's a two-way dialogue. So that we know provides a lot of value. The members around the table, members of an advisory board or participants in another type of forum, they get extreme value from being in a room full of their peers that are struggling with a lot of the same things. And so we also pay a lot of attention to that when we're building the agenda and the opportunities for both formal dialogue and informal dialogue. So a lot of times the best value comes from dinner or drinks at the bar or some kind of excursion or, some type of fun activity. It's not just in the boardroom where these really, really relevant conversations happen. And then finally, I think the big thing is all of these conversations are held under NDA. So they're getting a peek behind the curtain of a key partner that their competitors, we don't have competitors in the same room. So they're getting some insight and some strategic knowledge that their competitors are not. So that's also a key piece of attracting the C-suite to the table.
So I guess the question is, if we're under NDA and attendees feel like they're going to learn a little something, inside scoop, no competition, who's in the room from the company side? I'm guessing right now it's probably not like, oh, we got the C-suite from our clients and here's our direct salesperson, because the expectation in the room is that they're not going to be sold, I would imagine. So what does that look like? What does the company need to bring to the table in terms of the talent and the roles to make this thing work?
Yeah, definitely true. We do not include salespeople in these meetings, and it's really not because they couldn't add value, but because it sets a tone, a nuanced tone that it might turn into a sales type thing. And we're very, very protective of the environment so that it never, ever feels like they're going to get sold to. They're brought in as advisors and peers. So for the host company, it's usually reserved to C-suite people and even not the entire C-suite. So depending on the agenda, if there's a topic about the business model, we may bring in the CFO. If there's a topic about some operational challenges, we may bring in the COO. Just depends on the specific agenda, which members of the C-suite are included. Also, it depends on the number of people that come from the customer side. We like to have about a 2-to-1 ratio of 2 customers to 1 host company representative, because we want it to be more about them, not about this big organization. So we want to keep, it's not a balance of power, so to speak, but we want it to be heavily weighted toward, we want to learn from all the customers and have this dialogue and make it more about them. So we're very, very protective of not making it a sales event.
How do you keep the elevation then if it's like, let's just say the problem you solve and the solution you sell, day in and day out does not affect the C-suite as the C-suite might even notice it. It does, because we can always ladder up the business impact and say, oh, it does this or it does that. But day in and day out, the C-suite doesn't touch something, but yet we have to connect with them. What gets them in the room with your company if they are not, let's say, their very job every day is affected by, as far as they can tell, your solution, but yet their initiatives, their strategies, their market insights are super important to your solution and their decision for you? How do you get them in the room? What do they have to be promised in terms of not just the experience, cool excursions and whatnot, but like the dialogue? How do you level that up?
Yeah, I think honestly, Tim, this ties back to a conversation we had at the annual conference with the CXO panel about de-risking and how important it is for the C-suite to understand how their organizations can be de-risked by the people that they're working with. And so we try to have a lot of conversations that get to that point. Like we can, depending on who the host company is, here's how we help you de-risk your organization. So that's a piece of it. The other piece of it is there's a lot of conversation around industry challenges. And so the customers are interested in attending because they want to hear from other thought leaders in their space. And so that's a high value to them. And if the host company is providing this forum, it's a value add. It's another reason to like this host company as a partner because they're bringing these people together, and it goes beyond the products and services that they sell. It's another key piece of a high value that you don't see on the website necessarily, but it's very, very valuable to the attendees. So the key to that then is communicating that to them. That this is something that not everybody that we work with gets to experience, and we chose you, and then make it really high value.
Yeah, I mean, it's a hard group to organize, but I also believe it's a lonely group, and the right form of community and the right guaranteed experience and the right contacts and network and insights they're going to get have to be attractive, but it requires you to package that up in a way that they really feel like it's for them. And this isn't just about your company sucking all the insight out of them.
Yeah. And just a little inside scoop from the Congruity side. One of the ways, the primary way that we measure our effectiveness is we do a survey at the end of every single engagement we have for 10 years. And we ask them, was this a good use of your time? Super easy question. And if it's a good use of the customer's time, then that means it was valuable also for the host company. And if it's valuable for the host company, then we know we've done our job as the partner on making these things happen. And so we are very, very focused on ensuring that it's a good use of their time. So one of the things that we do in advance of an engagement is we'll ask the participants, what are some of the things that are relevant that you want to talk about and that matter to you and that you want to tee up for conversation? And we try to incorporate as much of that as possible into the agenda. So that there's a balance of topics that are valuable for the host company, but also the participants are bringing what's top of mind for them as well. And we plan around that.
And a willingness to share with each other, like that's got to be part of the agreement, I would think, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And we do a lot of prep on both sides. We prep the participants. Here's what to expect. Here's what we're asking from you. Here's the agenda. Be thinking about these things in advance so nobody feels like they're put on the spot. They're very well prepped for the meeting. And then we do, I guess it could be seen as we call it a prep session. It's a little bit of training on how best for the host company to show up and engage, because there's some nuanced things that can change the dynamic and the feel. And just as a classic example, I had our client last week at the roundtable tell us that they never thought of it this way, but we coach our C-suite clients to not react and say, oh, great idea, or, oh, that's awesome. Because then if you don't do that for the next person, they might feel like their idea wasn't as well received. So we coach them on, we're going to take a note of that, or that's something for us to take and explore, or something like that. So it's not a value statement, and it's very, very nuanced, but it can change the vibe of the room or the vibe of somebody that's attending if they don't feel like they got the same validation as the last guy who talked. So we do a lot of prepping. And then the other thing is we make sure that the executive team is fully aligned on what's about to happen. And this is actually kind of my favorite part of what we do. We prep and make sure that left hand knows what right hand's going to do and say. Everybody's aligned. There's no disconnect that could surface in front of the customers, which is a big risk. You don't want to do that and look like the internal team doesn't have their act together. And during our prep sessions, we have things surface where the internal team is not aligned, and we take the time. I've got one story that's kind of crazy about that, but we take the time to make sure that going into the room, everybody knows exactly what's about to happen. May not know the exact conversation that's going to happen, but they know exactly where they stand on anything that could surface depending on the topic.
What if your next big revenue move didn't come from a blog post or a cold LinkedIn scroll, but from a real conversation with leaders who've been there?
As the world of sales is constantly evolving and constantly changing, I think it's even more critical to get together with people to understand how are they helping to solve some of the problems that our buyers have today.
Meet Emblaze, a community of sharp B2B minds, CROs, CSOs, rising stars, sharing what's actually working in sales, enablement, and customer growth.
We always find a lot of value in the partnerships that we're able to form with some of the other great organizations that are part of the team here. And personally, I love the opportunity to connect with my peer group outside of other organizations and learn from them and try to figure out if there's things that they're doing that we can pull into our organization and benefit from.
Join a monthly forum, dig into science-backed strategy, and get insight you won't find in your feed. Start your Emblaze journey today at emblazegrowth.com.
And I love crazy stories. You said you had a crazy story, but and I'm willing to hear that one, Betsy. But I do want to hear nobody does this just necessarily for pure generosity, right? I think there's always a hopeful return on investment for the company who's putting together these programs. What kinds of things have you seen measured that matter? Any great examples of some game-changing results? What are folks typically looking at? I know there's brand and there's relationship, but I nobody does anything for free anymore.
Yeah.
So what are you seeing?
Yeah, I'm so happy that you asked that question. So the three metrics that we really drive toward for our clients are account expansion, account acquisition, and customer retention. So those are the three big metrics. There are lots of other great things that happen as a result of what we do, but those are the three metrics that we measure for return on investment. So I've got a really amazing story. This was several years ago, but we had a client, and it was the second meeting of their customer advisory board, but the first meeting for one particular CEO who was in attendance. And so we had the meeting. It was a day and a half offsite, really good meeting. And at the end of the meeting, everybody's in the boardroom and they're packing up their stuff and saying their goodbyes. And the chief commercial officer of our client came up to me. He said, "You're not going to believe what just happened." And so I said, "What?" And he said, "This one particular CEO said, you don't know this, but we've spent the last year working our strategy on how we're going to move away from you. We have a 3-year contract. We have 1 year left on it. And we have been planning our exit for the last year. We've talked to your competitors. We're narrowing down who we're going to go with." He said, "When I got this invitation to participate, I just came because I wanted to hear what you guys had to say, because we're not very happy with you. And I wanted to hear what you had to say." And he said, "Now, as a result of this meeting, I understand your strategy. I understand where you're heading and how that aligns with my strategy. I understand your capital expenditures that you've got planned." He said, "I now have a network of my peers that I can go to with questions." He said, "We're done. We're not going to move from you. We're going to stay with you. I'd like to renegotiate our contract now, a year early, make it a 3-year contract, and add on all of our international business." So my client was losing his mind at that point. But then what happened was that all happened. And then he made a referral to another organization over in the UK. That company became a client and then very quickly rose to be a top 20 account for the host company.
And then hopefully they joined the advisory board, and it was the circle of life. I love that story. And I'm sure that the other thing that probably happened subconsciously, subliminally, was this. They get in the room, they hear those things from the host company, but they also maybe start to feel some actual good vibes from successful clients who look just like them. And then all of a sudden you start to go, well, maybe I'm part of the problem. Like, look, they're having good success, and your ability to take on a different perspective. I love that story. It's awesome.
One quick point I want to make is he also now had access cell phone numbers of all of the executive team. So that having that direct access is really, really valuable as well.
So it's not enough just to get the right executives in the room. You also have to give some thought to how are you following up with them afterward, after they've jumped on the plane and headed home. Next, Tim asked Betsy, what kind of post-meeting insights or follow-ups do you offer for attendees? Let's see what Betsy has to say.
Yeah, so we have as much focus on the post-meeting activities, almost as much as we do leading up to it, because that's kind of where the rubber meets the road. It's great to have a meeting, but if nothing happens after that, then it does start to become kind of not a good use of their time, because none of these people that attend these events want to just show up and then have the insights go into the ether. They want to know that they're helping and contributing and that this is going to further things for everybody. So we have a communications plan. We do a complete debrief with our client first, and then we craft a communication, a post-meeting communication out to the members. And then we really encourage and support our clients in communicating on a regular basis. Here's what's happened since we had that conversation. And here's what you might be seeing. And that's a direct result of conversations that we had in the meeting in February or whatever. So it also helps build that continuity of communication. But one of the other key things is coaching our clients to filter that information to their accounts, their direct relationships. So for example, we did this roundtable last week in Austin, and what we supplied back to our client was every member around the table, what mattered to them, what their priorities were, maybe some friction points that need to be addressed. And we just basically put this in a PowerPoint slide with each client, each representative, and all the vital information that came out from these customers in the conversation, not the NDA protected stuff, but the stuff that's just a really good insight for the sales reps to go into it knowing, oh, I now know this about what's top of mind for this company and how can I help further? And then what that does with their relationship, it was like, hey, we had this customer advisory board with your leadership team. Here's what we're hearing. So it also supports their relationship in aligning with their leadership as well. Like, we got some inside scoop for you. Here's how we can help support you in that. So it really helps build the relationship between the sales rep and whoever their point of contact is. And so we're very diligent in capturing. We send 3 people minimum to each one of these engagements, and we're all taking notes because we're all going to hear different things. So we really focus on what are we hearing these people say that we can then share at the sales rep level as well.
I think our audience would be excited to get access to those notes. First things first, they have to have a company willing to organize and execute some form of advisory board or think tank or some of these other frameworks that you've built to create an environment. What's usually the first thing that has to happen? Who kind of makes this call inside of an organization that says this is strategic and important, we need to do it, and we need to do it well and professionally so that it actually gets pulled off? Is this the chief revenue officer of a company? Does a CEO have to make this happen? Like, where does this usually, so that our audience can go ping the right person in their organization to get this done? Who should they go talk to?
Ideally, it's the CRO. Because we can point to an ROI and how it helps with the account value growth, the retention and expansion and attraction of new clients. So it usually resonates like that with the CRO. A lot of times our CMOs are a point of contact, and every once in a blue moon, we get the CEO who's like, this is what we need to do. We actually have had it. I mean, from our side, it goes a lot faster if the CEO says this is what we're going to do and gets everybody lined up around it. However, the starting point for us is usually the CMO or the CRO. And because it's a direct, immediate impact to their job responsibilities.
And are they usually, how do they choose who belongs? Do they often do a couple and segment? What's the usual makeup of how a company approaches this so they get the biggest impact for the company itself? I'm picturing like we have small SMB, commercial, enterprise, strategic accounts. Is it always a strategic account thing, or how do people make that decision?
Yeah, that's a great question. So part of our process, the very first step in our process, is we do discovery interviews with the C-suite and find out what is it they're really trying to achieve and what are their objectives and what are their success measures. And then we come back to them with a recommendation on this is where we would suggest you focus on these invitations. And then we have a whole methodology behind how we decide. It's not just who can we get, it's who's going to make the most ideal board. If we have 10 to 12 people sitting around the table, how are we going to get the most diverse perspectives? How are we going to solidify an account that might be a little not where we want it? And it's an opportunity to strengthen that relationship. How do we bring in a couple of champions that love us as we are already and can spread that good vibe that you were talking about earlier? So we look very comprehensively at the people that would make the most dynamic conversation. We go after them, and I will say the large majority of the time, we're able to get all of those people. We have kind of a reserve list that we go to. A lot of times it's a timing thing. Sometimes people just can't get there, but they would want to. We rarely have anybody turn down the invitation to participate, but sometimes we have to go a little bit deeper on that list than we would ideally want to, just for various reasons. But we always, if we had somebody that said they can't participate, we look for something similar in those characteristics that will still keep that balance amongst the board.
It's like any board, right? I mean, I'm on community boards, and it's like, oh, we need somebody with this background, this experience, this tenure. Makes sense. How important, I need to know this, how important is the venue and the type of experience? Like, do I have to learn how to golf to be at one of these? Because I don't, and I'm horrible if I tried, and I'm too old to start. How important is the venue, the excursions, and the experiences? Like, is there any tips on like what works best to attract the right people and then create the right experience once they're there? Alcohol aside, let's just assume that does its job. But
Yeah. Yeah. And, at this level, the people attending, it's not about the experience, but you want to have a good experience. Like, they don't come just because they're going to get to do something cool. They have a chance all the time to do cool stuff. So it's really not about them. It's really about the content, the people, all the things we've already talked about. However, you want a really good experience. So we advise our clients, like even the little things, the room size has to be good. The direct or the indirect lighting and the venue has to smell good when you walk in. Those kinds of things all create the experience. As far as the excursion type things or the activities, we always make sure it's not anything that would exclude anybody. Not everybody loves to play golf. We had one not too long ago that was super cool. We were out in Park City, Utah, and for dinner, we took a sleigh ride up the mountain to a private yurt where we had this restaurant all to ourselves. And there was a piano player, and it was a chef that's won all kinds of awards that did the food and that kind of thing. And it was, I think, like 25 of us riding in the sleigh, because it was the host company as well as the customers. And took this beautiful sleigh ride up during the day so you could see everything. And then at night, it was all white lights coming back down on the sleigh ride. It was amazing. Didn't exclude anybody. And so we make sure that everybody has a really good experience. Now, that's not what we do. That's the one part of this whole process that we're very clear that's not our wheelhouse. We have a lot of great suggestions, and we know which venues work well, which don't. But we don't manage that piece of it.
Yeah.
But we'll coach.
But just the idea of being more inclusive is to me important. And a sleigh ride to a yurt with a world famous chef kicks golf's butt all day. So does a stick in the eye. But I mean,
it was amazing. It really was.
Well, I think the moral of that story is that I took away is that it's who's going to be there and what are we going to talk about first and foremost. But even though they have access to cool things, they'd still like some cool things.
Right.
So it's not important. So
it helps
awesome.
with the bonding thing too amongst the peers. Everybody around the table. It's just like a memory maker that bonds you, and there's a lot to it. There's a lot to the experience leading to the relationship development of everybody who participates.
Betsy Westhafer, thank you for the amazing conversation. I learned so much. And listener, I'm sure you did too. Subscribe and follow to the Emblazers show wherever you get your podcasts. And also check out the Emblaze community at emblazegrowth.com. See you next time.